London, 1847. The clock struck 12, and Lady Francesca Valmont tucked the letter inside her bodice with trembling fingers. The news was precisely what she had feared, unavoidable scandal unless she could procure £5,000 by month's end. She stood at the grand window of Valmont House, watching raindrops streak the glass as carriage lamps glowed in the fog-shrouded street below. "Your tea, my lady," announced Mills, her lady's maid, setting down the silver service. "Thank you, Mills." Francesca composed her features into the perfect mask of serenity she had spent years perfecting. No one, not even her trusted maid, would glimpse the panic beneath. Emotions were luxuries she had forsaken long ago, along with hope, trust, and most certainly love. "The Dowager Duchess of Granville has sent another invitation for her summer ball," Mills added. "Shall I draft the usual refusal?" Francesca nodded. "Yes, though do express my sincerest regrets as always. 5 years of invitations, 5 years of refusals." Society persisted in its attempts to lure the notorious Ice Duchess back into its fold, if only to whisper behind fans when she passed. The scandal of her first marriage and subsequent widowhood had faded somewhat, but the damage had been done. She had learned the most valuable lesson any woman of standing could learn. Love was a fairy tale, a trap designed to ensnare the foolish. Security, independence, and control, these were the only things worth pursuing. As Mills departed, Francesca poured her tea with a steady hand despite her inner turmoil. The blackmailer's letter changed everything. The secret she had guarded so carefully, the true circumstances of her husband's death, would destroy what little respectability she had painstakingly rebuilt. Her charitable work with abandoned women and children would collapse. No respectable patroness would stand beside her. The irony was not lost on her. She had spent 5 years helping women who had been ruined by men, all while hiding her own shameful secret. The following morning, Francesca donned her simplest walking dress, a dove-grey silk that nonetheless signaled her station to any observer, and made her way to her solicitor's office on Fleet Street. The city churned around her, indifferent to her distress. Inside her carriage, she reviewed her financial statements. Her husband, the late Duke of Valmont, had left her comfortable but not wealthy. His gambling debts had consumed much of the estate, and what remained was largely tied up in trusts she could not easily access. Mr. Hargrove, her solicitor, confirmed her worst fears. "I regret to inform you, Your Grace, that liquidating your investments on such short notice would incur ruinous penalties. Even then, it would not yield the sum you require." "There must be something," Francesca insisted. "Perhaps a loan against the Derbyshire property." "The property is entailed to your husband's cousin, as you know, without their consent." He cleared his throat. "May I inquire as to the urgent nature of this request?" "Perhaps there are other solutions." "That will be all, Mr. Hargrove," she said, rising. "Sharing the truth with anyone was unthinkable. Please continue exploring options." Stepping back into the weak April sunshine, Francesca felt the walls closing in. She had precisely 26 days before the blackmailer would publish his account in the London Gazette. 26 days to save everything she had rebuilt. Lady Valmont, what a fortuitous encounter. The voice struck her like a physical blow. Deep, resonant, and achingly familiar. She turned, her heart suddenly pounding against her ribs in a way it hadn't in years. Frederick Grantham, the Duke of Westmoreland, stood before her, as handsome as the day he had left her 8 years prior. His chestnut hair was touched with distinguished silver at the temples now, his shoulders broader beneath an impeccably tailored coat, but his eyes, those piercing blue eyes that had once promised her the world, remained unchanged. "Your Grace," she managed, executing a perfect curtsy despite her shock. "How unexpected." "Indeed." His smile was guarded, revealing nothing of his thoughts. "I've only recently returned to London after an extended stay abroad." "India, primarily." "How exotic." Her voice betrayed none of the turmoil within. The man who had once been everything to her before duty, family pressure, and his father's demands had torn them apart, stood before her as a stranger. "I trust you found it educational." "Educational," he repeated, a flash of something, amusement, bitterness, crossing his features. "Yes, one could say that. And you, I understand congratulations were in order, the Duchess of Valmont. Though I believe you've been widowed some years now." "5 years," she confirmed, keeping her tone even. "If you'll excuse me, I have pressing appointments." "Of course." He stepped aside, but not before she caught an unmistakable intensity in his gaze. "Though I wonder if I might call on you, for old time's sake." "I receive no callers, Your Grace. Good day." She moved swiftly to her waiting carriage, her composure intact until the door closed. Only then did she press a gloved hand to her mouth, stifling the sound threatening to escape. Frederick, here, now, when her life was once again on the precipice of ruin, the truth crashed through her carefully constructed defenses. She had never stopped loving him. She had simply buried that love beneath layers of duty, disappointment, and eventually, survival. Her marriage to the Duke of Valmont had been a business arrangement, engineered by her father to save their family from financial collapse. A marriage that had proved to be far more costly than anyone could have imagined. 3 days later, Francesca was reviewing household accounts in her morning room when Mills announced an unexpected visitor. "Lady Georgiana Templeton, Your Grace." Francesca looked up in surprise. Georgiana, once her dearest friend, had not called on her since before her husband's death. "Send her in, Mills." Georgiana swept into the room in a rustle of emerald silk, her once plump figure now fashionably slender, her auburn hair elegantly arranged. "Francesca, how positively Gothic you've become, shut away in this mausoleum." She kissed the air beside Francesca's cheek. "I simply had to come when I heard the news." News? Francesca's blood ran cold. Had the blackmailer acted early? "Frederick Grantham, back in London and apparently asking after you at Lady Penworth's dinner. Is it not delicious? The prodigal suitor returns." Georgiana settled onto the sofa, eyes alight with curiosity. "You must tell me everything." "Will you receive him?" "There is nothing to tell," Francesca replied evenly. "We exchanged brief pleasantries on Fleet Street, nothing more." "Oh, come now." Georgiana leaned forward. "Everyone remembers how besotted you were before he disappeared to India. And now he's returned, widowed, enormously wealthy from his ventures abroad, and asking about you. It's like something from a novel." "Life is rarely as tidy as fiction, Georgiana." Francesca poured tea with a steady hand. "And I have no interest in revisiting the past." "The past?" "Darling, I'm talking about your future." Georgiana accepted her cup. "You can't spend the rest of your life in mourning for that dreadful man you married. Everyone knows it was a marriage of convenience gone terribly wrong. No one would blame you for seeking happiness now." Francesca's cup rattled slightly against its saucer. "My husband's memory deserves respect, regardless of our private arrangements." "Respect?" "After what Georgiana stopped abruptly. "Forgive me, I spoke out of turn." "Yes, you did." Francesca set down her cup. "Now, if you've satisfied your curiosity." Georgiana sighed. "You've changed, Francesca. There was a time when you would have laughed, danced, seized any chance for joy." "What happened to that girl?" "She grew up," Francesca answered softly, "and learned that some prices are too high to pay." After Georgiana's departure, Francesca found herself drawn to the small writing desk in the corner of her bedroom. The lowest drawer, always locked, contained the only remnants of her former self: a pressed flower, a miniature portrait, and a bundle of letters tied with faded blue ribbon. Frederick's letters, written during their courtship. She had been barely 18, he 24. Young, idealistic, foolishly in love, she did not open the drawer. Some doors were best left closed. The next morning brought another letter from the blackmailer, this one containing a specific demand. She was to come alone to the Crown and Anchor Tavern in Covent Garden on the following Tuesday. The promise of a mutually beneficial arrangement made her blood run cold. Whatever this person wanted went beyond money. Francesca spent the day in a fog of anxiety, mechanically fulfilling her obligations. She visited the women's shelter she had established in Whitechapel, reviewed applications for assistance, and authorized funds for a new wing. Work that usually brought her satisfaction now felt hollow in the face of its potential loss. As her carriage turned onto Berkeley Square on her return journey, a sudden spring cloudburst forced it to slow. Through the rain-streaked window, she glimpsed Frederick emerging from his club, laughing with another gentleman. He looked up, somehow sensing her presence, and their eyes met across the rain-soaked expanse. For one unguarded moment, she saw raw emotion on his face, longing, regret, something unnameable, before he bowed slightly in acknowledgement. The carriage moved on, but the moment lingered like the echo of music long after the orchestra had ceased playing. That evening, a footman arrived with a small parcel and a note bearing the Westmoreland seal. Francesca's hand trembled as she broke the wax. "Lady Valmont," it read in Frederick's bold hand, "I hope you will forgive the presumption, but upon seeing you today, I was reminded of something that once brought you joy. Perhaps it might do so again. Respectfully, Westmoreland." The parcel contained a first edition of Wordsworth's poems, the very volume they had read together during summer afternoons in her father's garden. Inside, a passage was marked with a pressed violet, "Though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass, of glory in the flower, we will grieve not, rather find strength in what remains behind." Francesca closed the book with a snap. How dare he presume to know her now, to remind her of what they had lost? And yet her treacherous heart quickened at the gesture. For the first time in years, she felt something crack in the ice she had so carefully cultivated around herself. The following day, after much internal debate, Francesca sent a brief note to Westmoreland House. "Your Grace, thank you for the thoughtful gift. If you would care to call at 3 o'clock tomorrow, I shall be at home. Lady Valmont." Precisely at 3 the next afternoon, Frederick was announced. He entered her drawing room with the confidence of a man accustomed to commanding attention, yet she detected a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. "Lady Valmont," he said, bowing over her hand, "thank you for receiving me." "Your Grace," she gestured to a chair, "please sit. I confess your gift took me by surprise." He settled opposite her, studying her face with an intensity that made her grateful for the protective layers of her widow's composure. "I hoped it might. Surprise has the virtue of bypassing our defenses, does it not?" "Some defenses exist for good reason." She poured tea with practiced grace. "You mentioned you've been in India." "Yes," he accepted the cup. "After my father died and I assumed the title, I found England suffocating. India offered opportunities, not just for investment, but for a different perspective." "And your wife?" The question slipped out before she could stop herself. Georgiana had mentioned his widowhood, but little else. A shadow crossed his face. "Helena died in childbirth 3 years ago. Our daughter survived. She's with my sister's family in Bath while I settle matters in London." "I'm sorry for your loss," Francesca said, and meant it. Whatever had happened between them, she would never wish him that particular pain. "As I am for yours," his gaze was direct, "though I've heard rumors that your marriage to Valmont was not a love match." "Rumors are London's favorite currency, as you well know." She set down her cup. "Why have you sought me out, Frederick, after all this time?" He leaned forward, his expression suddenly vulnerable. "Because not a day has passed in 8 years when I haven't regretted leaving you. Because when I saw you on Fleet Street, I realized that time and distance haven't changed what I feel." "And what do you feel?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "That I've been a fool. That we were both victims of circumstance and duty. That perhaps, if you're willing, we might discover if anything remains of what we once shared." Francesca rose abruptly, moving to the window. You speak of the past as if it can be simply reopened like a book. Life isn't so accommodating. I'm not suggesting we pretend the years haven't passed, he said, standing but keeping his distance. We're different people now. I'm asking for a chance to know the woman you've become. She turned to face him, her expression carefully controlled. My life is complicated, Frederick. There are circumstances you cannot possibly understand. Then help me understand. He took a step closer. Whatever it is, Francesca, we can face it together. The tenderness in his voice nearly undid her. How easy it would be to surrender to this fantasy, to believe that love could conquer the nightmare that had been her marriage, the terrible secret she carried, the threat hanging over her head. I appreciate the sentiment, she said finally, but I'm afraid it's impossible. My life is here, in the work I've built. I have responsibilities, obligations. To your charities, I've heard of your work with unfortunate women. It's admirable. It's necessary, she corrected, and all-consuming. He studied her for a long moment. Very well, I won't press you, but I hope you'll allow me to call again, perhaps accompany me to the botanical gardens. Neutral ground, with no expectations beyond pleasant conversation. Against her better judgment, she nodded. Saturday, perhaps, if the weather permits. After he left, Francesca pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window, watching his tall figure stride across the square. What madness had possessed her to agree to see him again, especially now, with the blackmailer's deadline drawing nearer? Yet she couldn't deny the flutter of something long dormant awakening within her. For the first time in years, she had felt alive in his presence, afraid, yes, but undeniably alive. Saturday dawned clear and mild. Francesca chose a walking dress of periwinkle blue, the first color beyond grays and blacks she had worn in public since her husband's death. Mills noticed, but said nothing, as she arranged Francesca's hair in a simple but elegant style. Frederick arrived promptly, offering his arm with a smile that transporting her momentarily back to their youth. In the carriage, their conversation remained carefully polite, touching on mutual acquaintances, changes to the London landscape, art exhibitions. At the gardens, however, among the vibrant spring blooms and away from prying eyes, the formality between them began to thaw. Frederick spoke of India, the colors, the scents, the stark contrasts between beauty and suffering. Francesca found herself sharing details of her charitable work, the women whose lives had been shattered by men's cruelty or indifference, her efforts to create a space where they might rebuild dignity and purpose. You speak of them with such passion, he observed as they paused beside a reflecting pool. It's more than charity for you, isn't it? She traced a finger along the stone edge. When one has experienced darkness, one develops a certain sensitivity to it in others. Darkness, his voice softened. What darkness did you experience, Francesca? She looked up at him, suddenly vulnerable. My marriage was not kind. Frederick's expression hardened. Did he hurt you? Not in ways that left visible scars. She moved away, needing distance from his intensity. It was a marriage of convenience, as you said. I fulfilled my part by providing him with social acceptance and access to my father's connections. He fulfilled his by providing financial security for my family. But at what cost to you? The past is immutable, Frederick. I've made my peace with it. Have you? He followed, standing close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. Is that why you've locked yourself away from life, from the possibility of happiness? I find happiness in my work, she countered. Work is purpose, not joy. He reached out slowly, giving her time to retreat, and took her gloved hand in his. Joy is this, connection, understanding, the freedom to be seen for who you truly are. Francesca felt tears threatening and blinked them away. You presume to know who I truly am after 8 years of absence. I know the essence of you hasn't changed, he said with quiet certainty, just as mine hasn't. We may have new scars, new wisdom, new priorities, but our souls recognize each other, Francesca. They always have. For one dangerous moment, she allowed herself to believe him. Then reality intruded in the form of a passing acquaintance who nodded in their direction, eyes widening at the sight of the reclusive Duchess of Valmont in such intimate conversation with the Duke of Westmoreland. Francesca withdrew her hand. "We should return. I have appointments this afternoon." Frederick didn't press, but as he handed her into the carriage, he asked, "Will you attend the Harringtons' musical evening on Tuesday? I understand it's to benefit the Children's Hospital, a cause that might align with your interests." Tuesday, the day she was to meet the blackmailer. "I'm afraid not. I have a prior engagement." "Another time, then." He hesitated, then added, "I meant what I said, Francesca. I want to know you again, all of you, not just the carefully constructed facade you present to the world." She looked away. "Be careful what you wish for, Frederick. Sometimes what lies beneath the facade is best left undisturbed." The days until Tuesday passed with excruciating slowness. Francesca arranged her affairs meticulously, as if preparing for a journey from which she might not return. She updated her will, wrote letters to her solicitor regarding her charities, and placed certain documents where they would be found if necessary. On Tuesday evening, dressed in her plainest gown and heaviest cloak, she dismissed her coachman with instructions to return in 2 hours and made her way on foot the short distance from where he had left her to the Crown and Anchor. The tavern was crowded, smoky, and loud, no place for a lady, but ideal for clandestine meetings. In the private room specified in the letter, she found not the rough criminal she had envisioned, but a gentleman of middle years, impeccably dressed and vaguely familiar. "Lady Valmont," he said, rising. "Or should I say, Duchess, thank you for coming. My name is James Hargrove." Hargrove, the surname triggered recognition. "Any relation to my solicitor?" "His cousin," he gestured to a chair. "Please sit." "Would you care for refreshment?" "I would care for an explanation," she said coldly, remaining standing. "Why are you blackmailing me?" "Blackmail is such an ugly word," he smiled thinly. "I prefer to think of this as a negotiation between parties with mutual interests." "We have no mutual interests." On the contrary, he opened a leather folio and removed a document. "We share an interest in the true circumstances of your husband's death. I have here the testimony of a maid who was in your household that night. She paints quite a vivid picture of the Duke's rage, his attack upon you, and the subsequent accident." Francesca's blood turned to ice. "If you believe a hysterical servant's tale." "I believe the physical evidence," he interrupted smoothly. "The broken banister that conveniently gave way when the Duke fell against it. The absence of witnesses beyond yourself and this maid. The hasty funeral, the convenient explanation of a tragic accident while intoxicated." She clenched her fists within the folds of her cloak. "What do you want?" "As I said, a mutually beneficial arrangement." He leaned forward. "I need a wife of appropriate standing to secure a certain business opportunity. You need this document and its author to disappear." Francesca stared at him, horror dawning. "You expect me to marry you?" "A marriage of convenience, nothing more." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You've experience with such arrangements, after all. Announce our engagement within the week, and this document vanishes. Refuse, and it goes to the authorities and the London Gazette." "You're insane," she whispered. "I'm practical." He returned the document to his folio. "Consider your position, Duchess. Your reputation, your charities, your freedom, all hang in the balance. I require only your name and standing. In return, you maintain everything you've built. I need time to consider." "Until Friday," he stood. "I'll call at Valmont House for your answer then. Choose wisely." Francesca stumbled from the tavern into the night air, gasping for breath. The truth she had buried for 5 years threatened to suffocate her. Her husband's drunken rage, his hands around her throat, the desperate struggle that had ended with him crashing through the rotted banister of their country house. Self-defense, but who would believe a duchess who had married for money, who had never pretended to love her husband? She had protected herself then by accepting the convenient narrative of a tragic accident. Now that decision threatened to destroy everything. Lost in horror, she didn't notice the carriage until it slowed beside her. Francesca! Frederick's voice jolted her back to awareness. He leaned from the carriage window, concern etched on his features. "What are you doing in this area alone at night?" He opened the door, extending his hand. "Come, let me take you home." Too shaken to refuse, she allowed him to help her into the carriage. In the dim lamplight, he studied her face with growing alarm. "You're pale as death. What's happened? Are you hurt?" "No, She couldn't continue, tears threatening to choke her. Without a word, Frederick moved to sit beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. The simple human contact broke something within her, and she found herself weeping against his chest as the carriage began to move. He didn't press for explanations, simply held her until the storm passed. When she finally straightened, accepting his handkerchief with trembling fingers, he said gently, "Whatever it is, Francesca, you don't have to face it alone." The tenderness in his voice nearly undid her again. "You can't help me, Frederick. No one can. Try me." He took her hand. "I'm not the same callow youth who yielded to his father's demands 8 years ago. I've learned a few things about courage and regret." For one wild moment, she considered telling him everything: the loveless marriage, Victor's escalating cruelty, that final night of terror, and now Hargrove's impossible demand. But revelation would only endanger Frederick too. "It's kind of you to offer," she said instead, "but this is my burden to bear. The burden you were carrying when I encountered you fleeing a dockside tavern alone at night." His tone remained gentle, but his eyes were sharp. "Forgive me if I find that concerning. It's business, a private matter. Business conducted in such establishments is rarely legitimate." He studied her. "Are you in some kind of trouble, Francesca? Financial difficulties, perhaps?" She laughed bitterly. If only it were so simple. "Then what, blackmail?" When she flinched involuntarily, his expression darkened. "It is blackmail who is threatening you. What do they claim to know?" "Please, Frederick," she pulled her hand away. "I appreciate your concern, but this is precisely why I've kept to myself these 5 years. Society thrives on scandal and secrets. I will not become fodder for gossip again." "This isn't about gossip." Anger edged his voice now. "This is about your safety, your well-being, if someone is threatening you." "They're threatening to reveal the truth," she burst out, immediately regretting the admission. Frederick went very still. "What truth?" The carriage had reached Berkeley Square. Francesca gathered her cloak around her like armor. "Thank you for the ride, Your Grace. Please forget you saw me tonight. It's better for both of us." Before he could respond, she opened the carriage door and hurried toward her house, not looking back to see if he followed. Inside, she leaned against the closed door, heart pounding. What had she done? Involving Frederick could only make matters worse. Yet part of her, the part she had suppressed for years, cried out for his help, his strength, his belief in her. Sleep eluded her that night. By morning, she had made her decision. She would not marry Hargrove, would not submit to another loveless union based on coercion. If scandal and ruin were the price of her freedom, so be it. She would face the consequences of that long-ago night with dignity. She spent the day putting her affairs in order, writing letters to supporters of her charities, explaining that personal matters would necessitate her withdrawal, though she hoped the work would continue. The prospect of disgrace and possible imprisonment loomed, but strangely, having made her decision brought a certain peace. The peace shattered when Mills announced a visitor just after tea. "His Grace, the Duke of Westmoreland, my lady. He insists it's a matter of urgency." Frederick entered like a storm front, his usually immaculate appearance showing signs of distress, cravat slightly askew, hair ruffled as if he'd run his hands through it repeatedly. "I know," he said without preamble, "about Victor, about what really happened the night he died." Francesca felt the room tilt. "How could you possibly?" "I spent the night making inquiries. I have connections in places most of society never sees." He approached her, eyes blazing with emotion. "I know he abused you. I know what happened that night was self-defense. And I know someone is using this information to blackmail you." She sank onto a chair, legs suddenly unable to support her. "If you know, then you understand why I must face this alone." "No," he knelt before her, taking her hands. "I understand why you believe that, but you're wrong. You've been alone too long, Francesca, carrying this burden by yourself." "What would you have me do?" she asked, voice breaking. "He demands marriage in exchange for silence. If I refuse, he'll expose everything. Either way, my life as I know it ends. Marry me instead." The words hung in the air between them, impossible, outrageous. "What?" "Marry me," Frederick repeated, his grip on her hands tightening. "Today, if possible. As my wife, you'll have the protection of my name, my resources, my lawyers. No blackmailer would dare move against the Duchess of Westmoreland." "You can't be serious." She pulled her hands away. "You would tie yourself to a woman suspected of murdering her husband. Risk your reputation, your daughter's future." "I would tie myself to the woman I've loved since I was 24 years old," he said fiercely. "The woman I never should have left. As for my reputation, let them talk. I've wealth and influence enough to weather any storm. And when they arrest me, when I stand trial, it won't come to that." His confidence was absolute. "Trust me, Francesca. Together we can defeat this threat." She stood, moving away from his intensity. "You make it sound so simple." "Not simple, but possible." He followed, turning her gently to face him. "What other choice do you have? Marriage to your blackmailer, prison, exile, none of those are acceptable. And marriage to you, a union founded on crisis and old memories." His expression softened, "Founded on trust and second chances. I know we can't simply resume where we left off 8 years ago, but I believe what we could build now, older and wiser as we are, might be even stronger." Hope, that dangerous emotion she had banished for so long, flickered to life. "And if you're wrong, if this ends in disgrace for both of us, then we'll face it together." He cupped her face with trembling hands. "I lost you once to fear and duty. I won't lose you again to pride and isolation." For a breathless moment, Francesca allowed herself to imagine it, a life with Frederick, a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding, perhaps even love. The safety of his protection, the warmth of his regard. Against her will, tears welled in her eyes. "I don't deserve such devotion," she whispered. "You deserve everything," he countered, brushing away a tear with his thumb. "Joy, security, passion, peace. Let me give you those things, Francesca. Let me try." Slowly, tentatively, she nodded. "Yes." His smile was like sunrise after the longest night. Through a whirlwind of activity, Frederick's confidence never wavered. A special license was procured through connections at the highest levels. A private ceremony was arranged for the following morning. Messages were sent to key members of society announcing the union, presenting it as the culmination of a long-standing attachment recently renewed. When James Hargrove arrived at Valmont House on Friday as promised, he was met not by Francesca alone, but by Frederick and 2 stern-faced gentlemen from the Home Office. "Mr. Hargrove," Frederick said pleasantly, "I believe you have something belonging to my wife." "Wife?" Hargrove's composure slipped for the first time. "What trickery is this?" "The Duchess and I were married yesterday morning." Frederick's smile didn't reach his eyes. "A joyous occasion, though somewhat hastily arranged. Now about that document and its author." What followed was a masterclass in the wielding of power. The evidence of Hargrove's blackmail attempt, coupled with Frederick's influence, ensured the man's swift downfall. The maid who had witnessed Victor's death was located and interviewed, her testimony confirming Francesca's account of self-defense against a violent, intoxicated husband. The matter was quietly closed, deemed a justified accident with no charges to be filed. In the weeks that followed, London buzzed with the romantic tale of the Duke and Duchess of Westmoreland, childhood sweethearts reunited after years apart, their love triumphing over time and circumstance. Few suspected the true complexity beneath the fairy tale. For Francesca and Frederick, reality was both simpler and more complicated than the gossip suggested. They moved carefully around each other, relearning preferences and habits, discovering the adults they had become. Frederick proved to be a patient partner, never pressing for more intimacy than she was ready to give, while making his continued desire for her clear through 1,000 small attentions. Francesca found herself gradually thawing, the walls she had built crumbling not all at once, but brick by careful brick. She continued her charitable work with Frederick's enthusiastic support, finding that his connections opened doors previously closed to her. When his daughter, 5-year-old Clara, joined them in London, Francesca approached the meeting with trepidation. But the child's open nature and Frederick's obvious adoration of her made it impossible to maintain distance. Within days, Clara was trailing Francesca through the house, asking endless questions about her work, her books, her life. "Do you love Papa?" the child asked one afternoon as they arranged flowers in the drawing room. Francesca's hands stilled on the roses. "What makes you ask that?" "Because he loves you," Clara said with the simple certainty of childhood. "He told me so. He said you were the bravest, kindest lady he'd ever known, and that's why he married you." "Did he now?" Francesca managed, heart full. "Do you," Clara persisted, "love him, I mean?" Francesca considered the question with the honesty it deserved. Did she love Frederick? The young man he had been, certainly. But the man he was now, thoughtful, determined, unwavering in his support. She was still discovering him. Yet each day revealed new facets to appreciate, new reasons to trust, new moments of connection that felt like coming home. "Yes," she said finally, surprising herself with the truth of it. "I believe I do." That night, for the first time, she went to his chamber instead of her own. He looked up from his book, surprise and hope mingling in his expression as she crossed to stand before him. "Francesca." "I've been afraid," she said simply. "Not of you, but of this, of feeling, of caring, of being vulnerable again." He set aside his book, rising to meet her. "I know, but I'm more afraid of never truly living again." She reached for him tentatively. "Of never knowing what we might have been, what we might still be." He drew her gently into his arms. "We have time, Francesca. All the time we need." "No," she looked up at him with newfound certainty. "We've lost enough time already. I don't want to waste another day." His kiss was everything she had remembered, and nothing like it at all. Familiar yet new, passionate yet reverent. As he drew her toward the bed, she felt the last of her defenses dissolve, replaced by a warmth that spread through her entire being. Later, cradled in his arms, she told him everything, the full truth of her marriage to Victor, the years of subtle cruelty, the isolation, the night that had ended in tragedy. Frederick listened without judgment, holding her through the difficult parts, his steady heartbeat beneath her ear a reminder that she was no longer alone. "I thought loving you was my greatest weakness," she confessed. "That it had made me vulnerable to my father's manipulation, to society's expectations. I believed that by closing my heart, I was protecting myself." "And now?" he asked, stroking her hair. She raised herself on one elbow to look at him. "Now I understand that love, real love, weakness at all, it's strength. The strength to be honest, to be seen, to face whatever comes together." His smile was luminous in the dim light. "That's what I've been trying to tell you." "I'm a slow learner," she admitted with an answering smile, but I'm beginning to catch up. In the months that followed, London watched in fascination as the once reclusive Duchess of Valmont transformed into the vibrant Duchess of Westmoreland. Her charitable work expanded, bolstered by Frederick's resources and connections. Together, they created a foundation to assist women escaping desperate circumstances, providing not just shelter, but education and opportunity. Clara blossomed under Francesca's gentle guidance, the relationship between stepmother and child growing into one of genuine affection. And if, the following year, the announcement of an impending addition to the family caused ripples of surprise through society, the joy radiating from the Duke and Duchess silenced even the most determined gossips. On a spring morning much like the one when they had reunited, Frederick found Francesca in the garden of their country estate, one hand resting on her growing belly as she supervised Clara's attempt to sketch a particularly vibrant rose bush. "Happy?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. She leaned back against him, savoring the solid warmth of his presence. "Beyond measure, and you?" "Complete," he murmured against her hair. "After all this time, finally complete." Francesca turned in his embrace to face him, seeing in his eyes the same wonder she felt, that they had found each other again across time and circumstance, that love once thought lost had been reborn stronger than before. "The heart remembers," she said softly, "even when we try to make it forget." His answer was a kiss, gentle and profound, witnessed only by Clara's delighted giggle and the spring blossoms nodding in the breeze, nature's blessing on a love reclaimed, a future rewritten, and a heart that had never truly forgotten how to love.